Chapter 23. The Fleur Forest. An orchestra of cicadas had already started their morning melodies when Pip glimpsed the bluest water she had ever seen. Gently rippling behind a veil of leaves rustling in a soft breeze, it was as if two skies lay one on top of the other. Rich green trees lined the water's banks, and its surface gleamed with pulses of dancing sunlight. Watching the tiny fish swimming in and out of the plants gently swaying in the shallows, Pip thought of Hans and wondered if the lake in Bavaria where he grew up was as beautiful as this one. "What is this place?" she asked, clambering down Henri's neck as he stopped to dip his great head of antlers and drink. Leon and G.I. Joe swooped beside her on the sand and bowed their heads to the water's edge. "We are at the southernmost point of the Grand Lakes of the Fleur Forest," the stag said, looking up for a moment between sips. "You must be thirsty. Try some." The cold water tasted sweet and refreshing, and Pip greedily slurped it until she could have no more. Their thirsts quenched, Henri grazed the grass along the banks of the lake, and Leon hunted the dragonflies darting over the surface of the water, while Pip joined G.I. Joe to scour the undergrowth for nuts, berries and seeds. Growing weary with full bellies, they returned to the thicket of the surrounding forest. Scraping the earth flat with his front hooves, Henri settled on the ground with his legs tucked under him and Pip curled up on top of his head. Above them, G.I. Joe and Leon swooped to a low-hanging tree branch and rolled their wings with fatigue. "How much further is it till we get there?" Pip asked, with a drowsy stretch that made her ears pop on her head. Feeling restless yet exhausted, she struggled to get comfortable between Henri's ears. Her mind was turning somersaults, wondering fearfully what was happening to Hans, Madame Fourcade and Andre in the camp. "It's not far," the stag yawned softly with a shake of his antlers. "We will arrive very late tonight. Men hunt in these parts, so it's not safe to leave before dark. We'll continue our journey at sunset." His big brown eyes looked up at the little mouse, wriggling on his head. "Try not to worry, little one. We'll find our friends as soon as we can." "How do you know the way?" she asked, liking the sound of his voice. It was calm and comforting. "I have travelled these skies before, mon ami," Leon said. "I rested in this place when I escaped from the Nacht und Nebel camp, and I know of this forest's smell. It's famous among deer for its wild flowers. We enjoy eating them the most. I was born in Belgium, in the wooded land that grows along the borders of France and Germany, and although it's far away, I can breathe in to find my way home. The Vento Mountains to the southeast also have their own smell, and even if the wind is high and I struggle to find my way, I can use the sun and the stars as my guide." "Like a compass," Pip said, fondly remembering Hans teaching her how to use the sky as one of her own. "Exactly," G.I. Joe smiled. "So if in doubt, follow your eyes and your nose, and then you'll always find your way home." "But what if you don't have a home?" she asked, with a mournful sigh, seeing the destroyed umbrella shop in her mind. "Then your suffering will teach you courage, mon ami," Leon said wisely. "But you must surround yourself with those that are good, who strengthen your heart for the better. Then the sadness inside you will not fall into darkness. Evil often feeds on those who have suffered the most." Like what happened to Hans? He had lost everything when Herr General found him. "Oui, he is lucky that his heart is strong, otherwise the Goliath rats would have changed it forever." His face softened, seeing her brow furrow. "Worry not, little one. Now you are with Noah's Ark, you are safe. Most of us have lost our homes too, but wherever we are, when we are together, we are home." "He's right," Henri said gravely. "It was the worst day of my life when I lost mine." "I'm sorry," Pip said, understanding his sorrow and tenderly stroking the top of the stag's head. "I lived on the French bank of the River Meuse. Our forest was so dense we thought it would be impossible for the enemy tanks to pass through," Henri said, shaking his head as his voice grew heavy with anger. "But those metal monsters stormed through it with their soldiers, tearing down our trees and ripping up our earth along a line they say stretched 100 miles. Then the planes came, swarming above us in the sky like black flies, dropping bombs until there was nothing left. We never stood a chance. When they crossed the river and invaded France, I joined the resistance so I could fight from within. Blitzkrieg, Leon said, angrily twitching his speckled wings with cold, amber stare. Like the Blitz in London, Pip said. The bombs came every night for months. Oui, Nazi Germany's lightning punch. They threw everything they had at us. But unlike Britain, we fell. It was our darkest day. They took our country, our home, from us, but we were not defeated. Madame Fargher and I were the first members of Noah's Ark. As a leader, she has great courage, knowledge and understanding. I will never lose faith in her, and we will not give up until our freedom is restored. We've got a lot to thank you for, G.I. Joe cooed, nodding at the stag and the eagle. Without the resistance telling us where the enemy was hiding and sabotaging communication lines, trains, roads and bridges, we could have lost D-Day. What was it like that day? Pip said with an inquisitive twitch of her nose. She had heard about the Normandy landings in the umbrella shop, but Mama and Papa had never wanted her to know too much of what was happening with the war. D-Day, G.I. Joe cooed, with a troubling sigh filled with difficult memories. Flying over the English Channel to France that night, strapped to my paratrooper's chest, you couldn't count how many boats and planes there were carrying thousands and thousands of Allied soldiers. Every one of those vessels carried pigeons like me because radio silence was imperative. The enemy could listen in to radio messages and know you were coming, but they couldn't hear us flying our messages over the sky. We just had to outrun their falcons back to Britain, and that's no easy task, believe me. Pip shuddered, remembering the falcon and the bramblebush. I was strapped to First Lieutenant John Russell from Fox Company in the 101st Airborne Regiment, the best air assault team of soldiers that there is, the pigeon cooed, proudly plumping his chest feathers. His mission was to take out the Nazi gun cannons hitting our boys arriving at the beaches. Mine was to deliver their message back to England if they succeeded. It was just after we flew over the Channel Islands when the flashing bullets and the missiles started flying at us, exploding like the biggest fireworks display you've ever seen, and we jumped right into that hornet's nest. It was dumb luck not to have been shot and killed on the way down like so many others were. Our parachute looked like Swiss cheese when we landed. It had so many bullet holes in it. It was scary as hell, but distraction will kill you, and we had a job to do. Once the boys cleared the gun cannons, they scribbled the good news onto a small sheet of paper, slotted it into the canister tied to my leg, and released me into the air, flying back to base over the beaches. The pigeon paused and closed his amber eyes with a grave shake of his head. I'll never forget it. The ocean was bleeding from the thousands of men who had been hit or killed. The water lapped at their bodies lying on the beach, some of them face down in the sand without their arms or legs. After I delivered the message telling Britain they'd won, I heard our soldiers battled until midnight that night. And they're still fighting to this day. But you can be sure they're going to storm through Hitler's front door in Berlin. Just you wait. Pip didn't know what to say. Only a few weeks ago, thousands and thousands of men had perished at the same place she and Hans had arrived on the Normandy coast. She thought of Peter and couldn't imagine how terrified he must have been there, nor could she comprehend how frightened Hans, Madame Fargher and Andre must be at that moment, and she shivered, remembering what Lucia had said about torture before they left the hollow under the fallen tree. How much longer will the world fight for, she said, feeling a knot of worry tying tightly in her stomach. We all must hope and pray it will end soon, Henri said. Amen to that, G.I. Joe cooed. With those last words, silence fell on Pip and her friends as they gradually drifted into a fitful sleep, feeling the weight of the night to come tremble uneasily in their hearts.